Welcome to Wikipedia for sleep. Tonight, let the architectural whispers of Nicholas Hawksmoor soothe you. Settle back, feel your body relax, and gently close your eyes. We'll begin our journey into slumber. Nicholas Hawksmoor. Nicholas Hawksmoor was an English architect. He was a leading figure of the English Baroque style of architecture in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Hawksmoor worked alongside the principal architects of the time, Christopher Wren and John Vanbrugh, and contributed to the design of some of the most notable buildings of the period, including St. Paul's Cathedral, Wren's City of London Churches, Greenwich Hospital, Blenheim Palace, and Castle Howard. Part of his work has been correctly attributed to him only relatively recently, and his influence has reached several poets and authors of the 20th century. Life. Hawksmoor was born in Nottinghamshire in 1661 into a yeoman farming family, almost certainly in East Drayton or Ragnall, Nottinghamshire. On his death he was to leave property at nearby Ragnall, Dunham and a house, and land at Great Drayton. It is not known where he received his schooling, but it was probably in more than basic literacy. George Virtue, whose family had property in Hawksmoor's part of Nottinghamshire, wrote in 1731 that he was taken as a youth to act as clerk by Justice Mellust in Yorkshire, where Mr. Gouge Sr. did some fretwork ceilings. Afterwards Mr. Hawksmoor came to London, became clerk to Sr. Christopher Wren, and thence became an architect. Apprenticeship. Christopher Wren, hearing of his early skill and genius for architecture, took him on as his clerk at about the age of 18. A surviving early sketchbook contains sketches and notes, some dated 1680 and 1683, of buildings in Nottingham, Coventry, Warwick, Bath, Bristol, Oxford, and Northampton. These somewhat amateur drawings, now in the Royal Institute of British Architects' Drawings collection, show that he was still learning the techniques of his new profession at the age of 22. His first official post was as deputy surveyor to Wren at Winchester Palace from 1683 until February 1685. Hawksmoor's signature appears on a brickmaker's contract for Winchester Palace in November 1684. Wren was paying him 2 shillings a day in 1685 as assistant in his office in Whitehall. From about 1684 to about 1700, Hawksmoor worked with Wren on projects including Chelsea Hospital, St. Paul's Cathedral, Hampton Court Palace, and Greenwich Hospital. Thanks to Wren's influence as Surveyor General, Hawksmoor was named Clerk of the Works at Kensington Palace and Deputy Surveyor of Works at Greenwich. In 1718, when Wren was superseded by the new amateur surveyor, William Benson, Hawksmoor was deprived of his double post to provide places for Benson's brother. Poor Hawksmoor, wrote Vanbrugh in 1721. What a barbarous age have his fine, ingenious parts fallen into! What would Monsieur Colbert in France have given for such a man? Only in 1726, after Benson's successor Thomas Hewitt died, was Hawksmoor restored to the secretaryship, though not the clerkship which was given to Henry Flitcroft. In 1696, Hawksmoor was appointed surveyor to the Westminster and Middlesex Commission of Sewers, but was dismissed in 1700, having neglected to attend the court several days last past. Maturity in 1702, Hawksmoor designed the Baroque country house of Easton Neston in Northamptonshire for Sir William Fermor. This was the only country house for which he was the sole architect, though he extensively remodeled Ockham House, now mostly destroyed, for the Lord Chancellor Peter King, 1st Baron King. Easton Neston was not completed as he intended, the symmetrical flanking wings and entrance colonnade remaining unexecuted. He then worked for a time with Sir John Vanbrugh, assisting him on the building Blenheim Palace for John Churchill, 1st Duke of Marlborough, where he took charge from 1705, after Vanbrugh's final break with the demanding Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, and Castle Howard for Charles Howard, later the 3rd Earl of Carlisle. In July 1721, John Vanbrugh made Hawksmoor his deputy as comptroller of the works. There is no doubt that Hawksmoor brought to the brilliant amateur the professional grounding he had received from Wren, but it is also arguable that Wren's architectural development was from the persuasion of his formal pupil, Hawksmoor. By 1700, Hawksmoor had emerged as a major architectural personality, and in the next 20 years he proved himself to be one of the great masters of the English Baroque. His Baroque, but somewhat classical and Gothic architectural form was derived from his exploration of antiquity, the Renaissance, the English Middle Ages, and contemporary Italian Baroque. Unlike many of his wealthier contemporaries, Hawksmoor never traveled to Italy on a grand tour, where he might have been influenced by the style of architecture there. Instead, he studied engravings, especially monuments of ancient Rome and reconstructions of the Temple of Solomon. Work at Oxford and Cambridge. As he neared the age of 50, Hawksmoor began to produce work for the universities of Oxford and Cambridge. In 1713, he was commissioned to complete King's College, Cambridge. The scheme consisted of a fellows building along King's Parade, and opposite the chapel a monumental range of buildings containing the Great Hall, kitchens, and to the south of that the library and Provost's Lodge. Plans and wooden models for the scheme survive, but it proved too expensive, and Hawksmoor produced a second scaled-down design. But the college, which had invested heavily in the South Sea Company, lost their money when the bubble burst in 1720. As a result, Hawksmoor's scheme was never executed. Instead, the college was developed later in the 18th century by James Gibbs and early in the 19th century by William Wilkins. In the 1690s, Hawksmoor gave proposals for the library of the Queen's College, Oxford. However, like many of his proposals for both universities, such as All Souls College, Oxford, the Radcliffe Library, Brasenose College, Oxford, Magdalen College, Oxford, the library was not executed. Hawksmoor conceived grand rebuilding schemes for central Oxford, most of which were not realized. Surviving drawings from around 1713 proposed the rebuilding of the central core of the academic area of Oxford as a forum universitatis. The concept for a domed circular library sitting within an open square for the Radcliffe camera was initially Hawksmoor's, but the commission for the building eventually went to James Gibbs due to Hawksmoor's untimely death. He designed the Clarendon Building at Oxford, the Codrington Library and new buildings at All Souls College, Oxford, parts of Worcester College, Oxford with Sir George Clark, the High Street screen at the Queen's College, Oxford, and 6 new churches in London. Hawksmoor was initiated into Freemasonry in 1730 at the Oxford Arms in Ludgate Street, City of London, a lodge belonging to the premier Grand Lodge of England. Hawksmoor's 6 London churches. In 1711, Parliament passed an act for the building of 50 new churches in the cities of London and Westminster, or the suburbs thereof, which established a commission which included Christopher Wren, John Vanbrugh, Thomas Archer, and a number of churchmen. The commission appointed Hawksmoor and William Dickinson as its surveyors. As supervising architects, they were not necessarily expected to design all the churches themselves. Dickinson left his post in 1713 and was replaced by James Gibbs. Gibbs was removed in 1716 and replaced by John James. James and Hawksmoor remained in office until the commission was wound up in 1733. The declining enthusiasm of the commission and the expense of the buildings meant that only 12 churches were completed, 6 designed by Hawksmoor and 2 by James in collaboration with Hawksmoor. The 2 collaborations were St. Luke Old Street and St. John Horsledown, to which Hawksmoor's contribution seems to have been largely confined to the towers with their extraordinary steeples. The 6 churches wholly designed by Hawksmoor were St. Alphege Church, Greenwich, St. George's, Bloomsbury, Christ Church, Spitalfields, St. George in the East, Wapping, St. Mary Woolnoth, and St. Anne's Limehouse. They are his best-known independent works of architecture, and compare in their complexity of interpenetrating internal spaces with contemporaneous work in Italy by Francesco Borromini. Their spires are essentially Gothic outlines, executed in innovative and imaginative classical detail. Although Hawksmoor and John James terminated the commission by 1733, they were still being paid for carrying on and finishing the works under their care until James's death. After the death of Wren in 1723, Hawksmoor was appointed surveyor of the fabric of Westminster Abbey. Parliament had voted £100 for the repair and completion of the Abbey in 1698. The west towers of the Abbey were designed by Hawksmoor, but not completed until after his death. Gallery of churches. Garden buildings and monuments. Hawksmoor also designed a number of structures for the gardens at Castle Howard. These are the Pyramid, the mausoleum built on the same scale as his London churches. It is almost certainly the first freestanding mausoleum built in Western Europe since the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Camire Gate, the Temple of Venus demolished at Blenheim Palace. He designed the Woodstock Gate in the form of a triumphal arch. He also designed the Ripon obelisk in Ripon's marketplace, erected in 1702, at 80 feet, 24 m. in height. It was the first large-scale obelisk to be erected in Britain. Death and obituary. Hawksmoor died on 25 March 1736 in his house at Millbank from gout of the stomach. He had suffered poor health for the last 20 years of his life and was often confined to bed, hardly able to sign his name. His will instructed that he be buried at the church of St. Botolph, Shenley, Hertfordshire, Shenleybury. The church was subsequently deconsecrated, and Hawksmoor's tomb now sits in a private garden. The inscription, cut by Andrews Jelf, a mason who worked on Hawksmoor's buildings, reads, PMSL Hic J Nicholas Hawksmoor Armor Architectus Abate Vicimo Quino di Anno Domini 1736 Etades 75. Hawksmoor's only child was a daughter, Elizabeth, whose second husband, Nathaniel Blackerby, wrote the obituary of his father-in-law. His obituary appeared in Reed's Weekly Journal, number 603. 27 March 1736. Thursday morning died at this house on Millbank, Westminster, in a very advanced age, the learned and ingenious Nicholas Hawksmoor, Esq., one of the greatest architects this or the preceding century has produced. His early skill in and genius for this noble science recommended him, when about 18 years of age, to the favor and esteem of his great master and predecessor, Sir Christopher Wren, under whom, during his life, and for himself since his death, he was concerned in the erecting more public edifices than any one life among the moderns at least can boast of. In King Charles Roman II reign, he was employed under Sir Christopher Wren in the stately buildings at Winchester, as he was likewise in all the other public structures, palaces and sea, erected by that great man under whom he was assisting, from the beginning to the finishing of that grand and noble edifice, the Cathedral of St. Paul's, and of all the churches rebuilt after the fire of London. At the building of Chelsea College he was deputy surveyor and clerk of works under Sir Christopher Wren. At Greenwich Hospital he was, from the beginning till a short time before his death, clerk of works. In the reigns of King William and Queen Anne, he was clerk of their Majesties' works at Kensington and at Whitehall, St. James and Westminster. In the reign of King George I, he was first surveyor of all the new churches and surveyor of Westminster Abbey, from the death of Sir Christopher Wren. He was chiefly concerned in designing and building a great number of magnificent noblemen's houses, and particularly, with Sir John Vanbrugh, those of Blenheim and Castle Howard, at the latter of which he was at his death, carrying on a mausoleum in the most elegant and grand style, not to mention many others. But one of the most surprising of his undertakings was the repairing of Beverley Minster, where the stone wall on the north side was near 3 foot out of the perpendicular, which he moved at once to its upright, by means of a machine of his own invention. In short, his numerous public works at Oxford, perfected in his lifetime, and the design and model of Dr. Ratcliffe's library there, his design of a new Parliament House, after the thought of Sir Christopher Wren, and to mention no more, his noble design for repairing the west end of Westminster Abbey, will all stand monuments to his great capacity, inexhaustible fancy, and solid judgment. He was perfectly skilled in the history of architecture, and could give exact account of all the famous buildings, both antient and modern, in every part of the world, to which his excellent memory, that never failed him to the very last, greatly contributed. Nor was architecture the only science he was master of. He was bred a scholar, and knew as well the learned as the modern tongues. He was a very skillful mathematician, geographer, and geometrician, and in drawing, which he practiced to the last, though greatly afflicted with chiragra, few excelled him. In his private life he was a tender husband, a loving father, a sincere friend, and a most agreeable companion, nor could the most poignant pains of gout, which he for many years labored under, ever ruffle or discompose his evenness of temper. And as his memory must always be dear to his country, so the loss of so great and valuable man insensibly, and in a more particular manner felt by those who had the pleasure of his personal acquaintance, and enjoyed the happiness of his conversation. Upon his death he left a widow, to whom he bequeathed all his property in Westminster, Highgate, Shenley, and East Drayton, who later married William Theaker. The grandchild of this second marriage ultimately inherited Hawksmoor's properties near Drayton after the death of the architect's widow. Gallery of Architectural Work. Hawksmoor in modern literature. Hawksmoor's architecture has influenced several poets and authors of the 20th century. His church, St. Mary Woolnoth, is mentioned in T.S. Eliot's poem The Waste Land. Algernon Stitch lived in a superb creation by Nicholas Hawksmoor, in London, in the novel Scoop by Evelyn Waugh. Hawksmoor is the subject of a poem by Ian Sinclair called Nicholas Hawksmoor. His churches, which appeared in Sinclair's collection of poems Lud Heat. Sinclair promoted the poetic interpretation of the architect's singular style of architectural composition, that Hawksmoor's churches formed a pattern consistent with the forms of theistic Satanism, though there is no documentary or historic evidence for this. This idea was, however, embellished by Peter Ackroyd in his novel Hawksmoor. The historical Hawksmoor is refigured as the fictional devil worshipper Nicholas Dyer, while the eponymous Hawksmoor is a 20th-century detective charged with investigating a series of murders perpetrated on Dyer's, Hawksmoor's churches. Both Sinclair and Ackroyd's ideas in turn were further developed by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell in their graphic novel, From Hell, which speculated that Jack the Ripper used Hawksmoor's buildings as part of ritual magic, with his victims as human sacrifice. In the appendix, Moore revealed that he had met and spoken with Sinclair on numerous occasions while developing the core ideas of the book. The argument includes the idea that the locations of the churches form a pentagram with ritual significance. Memorials in Towcester, Northamptonshire, Nicholas Hawksmoor Primary School, built on land formerly part of the Easton Neston estate, is named in recognition of the architect of nearby Easton Neston House. Our next topic tonight is Govind P. Agrawal. Govind P. Agrawal. Govind P. Agrawal is an Indian-American physicist and a Fellow of Optica, Life Fellow of the IEEE, and Distinguished Fellow of the Optical Society of India. He is the recipient of James Wyant Professorship of Optics at the Institute of Optics and a Professor of Physics at the University of Rochester. He is also a distinguished scientist at the Laboratory for Laser Energetics in the University of Rochester. Agrawal has authored and co-authored several highly cited books in the fields of nonlinear fiber optics, optical communications, and semiconductor lasers. Early life. Agrawal was born on July 24, 1951, in Kashipur of the Nainital district, which was then a part of Uttar Pradesh. He received the B.S. in physics degree from the University of Lucknow in 1969, with honors. He received the M.S. and Ph.D. in physics degrees from the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, in 1971 and 1974, respectively. He worked in a postdoctoral position in École Polytechnique in France from 1974 to 1976. Career from 1977 to 1979. Agrawal worked as a research associate at the City University of New York. During 1980 and 1981, he worked with the company Quantal in France. Later, he was a member of technical staff at the A&T Bell Laboratories in Murray Hill, New Jersey, where he worked from 1982 to 1988 on semiconductor lasers and nonlinear fiber optics. Agrawal joined University of Rochester in 1989 as a professor of optics. In 2013, he received the first Dr. James C. Wyant Professorship in Optics in the Institute of Optics, which was established by James C. Wyant himself. From 2008 to 2013, Agrawal served on the editorial advisory board, and from 2014 to 2020, he was the editor-in-chief of the Advances in Optics and Photonics Journal of Optical Society of America. According to Agrawal, his research interest shifted from telecommunications to silicon photonics in 2000 due to telecommunications bubble burst. After 2010, Agrawal's research focused on temporal waveguides, graded index fibers, and optical communications. Awards. Agrawal was elected as the Fellow of Optical Society of America, OSA, in 1986. In 1996, he was elected as the Fellow of IEEE for contributions to the development and understanding of semiconductor lasers and fiber optic communication systems. In 2000, he was awarded the Distinguished Alumni Award by his alma mater, the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. In 2012, Agrawal was awarded the Quantum Electronics Award by the IEEE Photonics Society for sustained contributions to fiber optic telecommunication technology through innovative research and authorship of numerous widely respected books in the field. Agrawal was awarded the William H. Riker University Award for Graduate Teaching from the University of Rochester in 2013 during the commencement ceremony. In 2015, he was awarded the Esther Hoffman Beller Medal by the Optical Society for inspiring and educating a generation of scientists and engineers involved with fiber optic communications and other photonics technologies through his seminal textbooks and high-impact scientific articles. Agrawal was the recipient of 2 major awards in 2019, Max Born Award of the Optical Society and the Quantum Electronics Prize of the European Physical Society. He was given in 2020 the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Hajim School of Engineering of University of Rochester. Publications: Agrawal has authored or co-authored more than 500 research papers in internationally reputed scientific journals and has made more than 200 conference presentations. He has also published 10 books. Most of his publications are highly cited. His book Nonlinear Fiber Optics, first published in 1989, is now in its 6th edition and has also been translated into several languages. Another book, Fiber Optic Communication Systems, first published in 1992 and currently in its 5th edition, is used as a standard textbook in many universities for courses on telecommunication. The list of books published by Agrawal is as follows. G. P. Agrawal and N. K. Data Semiconductor Lasers, 2nd ed. Springer, 2002. U. S. Kivshar and G. P. Agrawal Optical Solitons, From Fibers to Photonic Crystals, Academic Press, 2003. G. P. Agrawal Lightwave Technology, Components and Devices, Wiley, 2004. G. P. Agrawal Lightwave Technology, Telecommunication Systems, Wiley, 2005. M. Pramaratne and G. P. Agrawal Light Propagation in Gain Media, Optical Amplifiers, Cambridge University Press, 2011. G. P. Agrawal Nonlinear Fiber Optics, 6th ed. Academic Press, 2019. G. P. Agrawal Applications of Nonlinear Fiber Optics, 3rd ed. Academic Press, 2020. M. Pramaratne and G. P. Agrawal Theoretical Foundations of Nanoscale Quantum Devices, Cambridge University Press, 2021. G. P. Agrawal Fiber Optic Communication Systems, 5th ed. Wiley, 2021. G. P. Agrawal Physics and Engineering of Graded Index Media, Cambridge University Press, 2023. Let your mind wander now to Longford, Telford and Wrekin. Longford, Telford and Wrekin. Longford is a village and former civil parish, now in the parish of Church Aston, in the Telford and Wrekin district, in the ceremonial county of Shropshire, England. It is near the town of Newport. In 1961, the parish had a population of 102. On 1 April 1988, the parish was abolished and merged with Church Aston. History, Roman coins, and medieval artifacts have been discovered in the village, and it was listed in Domesday Book in 1086 with a population of 23 households, 5 plough lands and a mill. The historic manor covers 306 acres and includes the townships of Brockton and Stockton. Sites of historic importance include Longford Hall, a late 16th century dovecote, Church of St. Mary, 13th century Talbot Chapel, remains of a mill race and several farm buildings. During the English Civil War, the Battle of Longford was fought here. On 25 March 1644, Colonel Thomas Mitton, commanding 500 parliamentarians, was headed for the Royalist Cavaliers. Strongholds of Lilleshall Abbey and Lee Castle paused at Longford, which was garrisoned by parliamentarians, Roundheads, to rest his men. There, however, Sir William Vaughan and Colonel Robert Ellis, leading local Royalist forces, found Mitton and routed him. Having driven off Mitton, the Royalists then besieged the small garrison which took shelter in Longford Hall. The hall held out for a week before surrendering to the Royalists 2 April 1644. In the late autumn of 1645, Oliver Cromwell appeared before Longford. The village was quickly taken, and the general immediately placed Longford Hall under siege. Upon Cromwell's call for the garrison to surrender, Sir Bartholomew Pell, the Royalist commander, entered into negotiations with Cromwell, winning favorable terms. Pell surrendered to Colonel Hawson and Major Kelsey. Under the terms of surrender, the garrison was to surrender their arms without embezzling. Pell and his 14 officers were allowed to retain their horses, swords, and pistols. The garrison was to be escorted toward Oxford. Once these terms were met, Pell and the remaining 14 officers would leave Longford Hall. Longford Hall. Longford Hall was built in 1275 by Adam de Brompton and owned by the Talbot Earls of Shrewsbury. In April 1644, it was captured by Royalists and subsequently demolished. The present house was built on the site 1794–97 by Colonel Ralph Leake and designed by Joseph Bonomi. Longford Hall is now the junior boarding house and sports fields of Adams Grammar School. Geological, the area is situated on the Brockton Fault. Sandstone, Kidderminster conglomerate, and slate are prevalent in the area and were once mined at Brockton, Stockton, and Church Aston. When you are ready, we move on to the Russell Howard Hour. The Russell Howard Hour. The Russell Howard Hour is a British topical comedy news television series that premiered on Sky One on 21 September 2017. The series is hosted by Russell Howard, where he gives his thoughts and opinions on current topics, as well as featuring special guests and other stand-up comedians. The show is in a similar style to his previous show, Russell Howard's Good News, which aired on BBC Three and then BBC Two from 2009 to 2015. Production on 28 November 2017. It was announced that the show had been recommissioned for a second series, which began on 8 November 2018. Unlike the first series, the second series does not have a stand-up guest. Instead, there is a segment titled Live Forever, where Howard and another comedian test ways to live longer. On 24 January 2019, it was announced that the show had been recommissioned for a third and fourth series. In Series 3, there was a segment called Play Date, which replaced Live Forever, which showed Howard spending time with a celebrity. In spring 2020, shortly after the end of Series 3, the fourth series was revealed to be delayed until early autumn that year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, Howard created a spin-off series called Russell Howard's Home Time, featuring a similar format as the original show, except for a shorter 30-minute episode runtime. The program was filmed at his home in Bath, Somerset due to social distancing measures, and began on 9 April 2020, running for 9 episodes. The fourth series of the Russell Howard Hour began on 10 September 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the first episode of the series did not have a live audience. From episode 2 onwards, a live audience returned, albeit split into socially distanced groups. On 17 December 2020, it was announced that the show had been recommissioned for a fifth and sixth series. On 8 September 2022, the first episode of the sixth series was originally going to air, but it got pulled off air following the news of Queen Elizabeth II's death that night. After 2 days of delay, the episode was finally broadcast on Sky Max. With the closure of Sky One, the original channel for the Russell Howard Hour, it was announced that the series would move to Sky Max. With the exception of the Home Time spin-off, all episodes of the program have been recorded at Television Centre in London. Transmissions. Viewing figures episode viewing figures from Barb Top 10 programs until September 2018, and the 4-screen dashboard for September 2018 onwards. Series 1. Series 2. In Series 2, the stand-up comic segment at the end of each episode was replaced with Live Forever. In the segment, Howard and another comedian try an activity that is purported to improve health. Episode 7 was a Christmas special. Series 3. In Series 3, the Live Forever segment was replaced with Play Date. In the segment, Howard and another comedian try an activity that they have never done before. Russell Howard's Home Time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Series 4 was delayed until later in the year. This spin-off series filmed from Howard's home in Somerset features chats with celebrity guests, comedians and musical performances using Zoom. During the finale episode, Howard revealed that the regular show would return sometime in September 2020. Series 4 on 7 May 2020, Howard revealed in his spin-off series finale that the fourth series of the Russell Howard Hour would return in September 2020. However, due to the ongoing pandemic situation, this will be the first series to have no audience and only a skeleton crew, due to social distancing requirements. And now a new story begins. Pendular film. Pendular film. Pendular is a 2017 drama film co-written and directed by Julia Murat, starring Raquel Caro and Rodrigo Balza. The film centers around an artistic couple, one a dancer, the other a sculptor, who live and work together. It is a Brazilian and French co-production. The film premiered at the 67th Berlin International Film Festival, where it won the Fipresci Award. Plot Part 1. Alice's arrival, an artist couple, a male sculptor and female dancer, move into a factory loft together. They divide the floor of the empty loft with a roll of tape. One section is for his work, the others for hers. As they begin to move in, they have friends over for soccer, most of them other artists. Throughout the movie, the man is shown to occasionally play video games online with a female friend with whom he flirts. Inside their loft, the woman finds a steel cable attached to a pillar labeled Line Project 2004. She follows it throughout the building to a light post outside, but stops before she finds the end as she isn't wearing any shoes. Part 2. Impetus. The man asks the woman if he can expand his space into hers, as it's impossible for him to work without it. She agrees it's okay. The woman, while reading in a chair, begins balancing on two legs and then balancing between two chairs. This is transformed into a performance at the loft that leads to a party afterwards. The woman dances with friends and kisses one of them in full view of the sculptor. The sculptor sees this and is a little jealous, but she comes over to him. They make out and later have sex. The dancer receives a bad review on her performance, which the man reads to her, and she cries. She then begins to practice a new show with a partner in the loft, while the sculptor continues to work on his piece with his female assistant. Part 3. Action. The couple invites a critic friend, his wife, and their daughter over for dinner. The sculptor says that speaking not to the critic, but the friend, he feels lost in his work. The dancer plays with the daughter by dancing. Later that night, the couple have sex, and the man says he wants to give the woman a baby. The woman replies that she doesn't want a baby. After viewing the sculptor's new pieces, the critic says that he doesn't like them and, as a friend, suggests he find a new project. The woman searches for inspiration by watching videos, including of Trisha Brown, when she finds a tape labeled Line Project. She finds out that the cable extends far beyond the city, through the jungle, and to an institution where the sculptor recorded a man singing a song, which the sculptor sings to himself frequently in the present day. The dancer shows the sculptor bone fragments from a medical condition her father had, and tells him she has never shown them to anyone else. She then asks him to what the steel line connects. The sculptor looks reserved and says it's not important. The woman leaves the next morning to investigate the line. When she returns late at night, she has a wound on her knee. The sculptor bandages her. The dancer discovers she's pregnant and gets an abortion without telling the sculptor. When the sculptor finds out by reading post-op paperwork, he punches a wall in anger. The dancer sees this and bandages his hand. Part 4. Contraction. The next scene implies that the two have not seen each other for some time. The woman arrives at a coffee shop and looks around at the seats. She sits down and the man walks up. He asks her how she knew where he was sitting. She says she was watching him and his movements. He says that her ability to absorb movements doesn't mean she understands them. She then shows him a solution to a puzzle he had been trying to solve. The two smile at each other as the woman reaches out and feels his beard. The next shot is the woman back at the loft. In her space is now a massive sculpture, a giant wood bowl balancing on one point. It's labeled "Holds Only One Person," and the woman smiles reading it. She climbs onto it and begins to dance, rocking the balancing bowl, calmly and rhythmically dancing. The film cuts to the exterior of the building, the abandoned industrial factory, the first time it has been seen from the outside. Cast. Release Pendular premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival in 2017. The film also screened at AFI Fest in the New Auteurs and American Independence section in 2017. Reception. Critical response on the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes. 67% of 6 critics' reviews are positive. The Hollywood Reporter described the film as different from the comparable movie La La Land because, instead of focusing on making a career, Murat's picture revolves around the need to make art with career an afterthought. A.O. Scott of the New York Times also gave the film a positive review while comparing the film to La La Land, saying it is a film identical to and the complete opposite of La La Land. Accolades won the Fipresci Award at the Berlin International Film Festival. Let us drift gently now toward So Help Me Todd. So Help Me Todd. So Help Me Todd is an American legal comedy drama television series created by Scott Prendergast that premiered on September 29, 2022 on CBS. The series follows a talented but directionless private investigator who begrudgingly agrees to work at his overbearing mother's law firm. It stars Marcia Gay Harden, Skylar Astin, Madeline Wise, Tristan J. Winger, Ingosh Schlingman, and Rosa Evangelina Arredondo. In February 2023, the series was renewed for a second season, which premiered on February 15, 2024. In April 2024, the series was canceled after 2 seasons. The final episode aired with a cliffhanger on May 16, 2024. Premise: So Help Me Todd follows Todd, who has good instincts as a private investigator, but lacks direction and is the black sheep of his family. After his strong-willed mother, Margaret, negotiated to drop criminal charges against Todd 2 years previously, he reluctantly agrees to work at her Portland, Oregon law firm as an in-house investigator. Margaret believes in strictly adhering to the law, which is at complete odds with Todd's tendency to bend the law to navigate sticky situations. Cast. Main: Marcia Gay Harden as Margaret Wright, a defense attorney who completed her Juris Doctor degree after the death of her first husband Skylar Astin as Todd, Margaret's youngest child, a former private detective hired by Margaret's firm Madeline Wise as Allison, Todd's sister, and ER Dr. Tristan J. Winger as Lyle, a fastidious in-house investigator at Margaret's firm, Ingosh Schlingman as Susan, Todd's engaged ex-girlfriend, a lawyer at Margaret's firm, Rosa Evangelina Arredondo as Francie, Margaret's executive assistant recurring Mark Moses as Harry, Margaret's estranged husband and later ex-husband Jeffrey Nordling as Gus Easton, a fellow attorney, and a potential love interest for Margaret, Rob Labelle as Lars Boatman, Matthew Wilkes as Lawrence, Margaret's eldest child Leslie Silva as Beverly Crest, a partner at the law firm where Margaret works Clayton James as Chuck Grant, Allison's ex-husband Vanessa Antoine as Alex, Lyle's love interest, who is later revealed to be an undercover FBI investigator named Ariel Heather Morris as Judy Maxson. Season 2. Todd's love interest who works at a gift shop in the same office building where Todd and Margaret work. In addition, Thomas Cadrot co-stars as Chet Venables, a reporter married to Margaret's son Lawrence. Notable guest stars Briga Heelan as Amy Lisa Rinna as Jennifer Genola, Season 2, Sandra Bernhard as Belinda Tuttle, Season 2, Dean Winters as Dick Franks, Season 2, Jennifer Lewis as Jacqueline, Season 2, Lyle's mother. Production. Development on February 3, 2022. It was announced that CBS had given a pilot order to an untitled mother and son legal drama from Scott Prendergast. The series is produced by Prendergast, Phil McGraw, Jay McGraw, and Julia Eisenman. The pilot episode was also written by Prendergast. On March 15, 2022, Liz Kruger and Craig Shapiro joined the series as showrunners and executive producers. On May 12, 2022, it was announced that CBS had given the production, titled So Help Me Todd, a series order. It was also announced that Elizabeth Claviter had replaced Kruger and Shapiro as the series showrunner. On October 19, 2022, the series received a full season order. On February 2, 2023, CBS renewed the series for a second season. Casting in March 2022, it was announced that Gina Davis had signed on to star in the series. Shortly after, Skylar Astin was announced to star opposite her as her son. Madeline Wise and Inga Schlingmann also joined the cast in lead roles. After having filmed the pilot, it was announced that Davis had exited the series. On March 23, 2022, it was announced that Marcia Gay Harden had replaced Davis. A few days later, it was announced that Rosa Evangelina Arredondo and Tristan J. Winger had also joined the cast in series regular roles. On March 3, 2023, it was reported that Briga Heelan is set to guest star on the series' March 30 episode titled 12 Worried Persons. On December 23, 2023, it was announced that Lisa Rinna is set to guest star on the second season premiere episode. On February 7, 2024, it was reported that Heather Morris was cast in a recurring role, while Sandra Bernhard was cast in guest starring role for the second season. On March 12, 2024, it was announced that Jennifer Lewis is set to guest star for the second season. Filming production on the pilot began in March 2022 in Vancouver, British Columbia. Filming for the rest of the season began on July 27, 2022, and concluded on April 11, 2023. A TD Bank office in downtown Vancouver serves as Margaret's law firm. Broadcast on May 18, 2022, CBS announced its fall broadcast schedule for the 2022-23 television season, with So Help Me Todd airing on Thursdays at 9:00 p.m. The series began airing on September 29, 2022, on CBS. It also simulcasts on Global TV in Canada. The first season finale aired on May 18, 2023. The second season premiered on February 15, 2024. The series finale aired on May 16, 2024. Cancellation on April 19, 2024. CBS canceled the series after 2 seasons. A few days later, it was reported that fans are campaigning to save the show by starting petitions such as one titled as "Save So Help Me Todd" on CBS, and another, "Renew So Help Me Todd" for a 3rd season on Change.org. There is also a Facebook group called Save So Help Me Todd. Reception. Critical response. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported a 56% approval rating, with an average rating of 8/10, based on 9 critic reviews. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned a score of 51 out of 100 based on 6 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Season 2. See also Crazy Like a Fox, a mid-1980 CBS series with a similar premise. Next, we turn softly to Lianzhou Wang. Lianzhou Wang. Lianzhou Wang is a Chinese-Australian materials scientist and professor in the School of Chemical Engineering at the University of Queensland. He is director of the Nanomaterials Centre, NanoMac, and a senior group member at the Australian Institute for Bioengineering and Nanotechnology at the University of Queensland, as well as a Fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry. Education. Wang attended Shandong Polytechnic University in China, where he received a bachelor's degree in materials science and engineering in 1993. He went on to earn a master's degree in materials science and engineering in 1996 from Nanjing University of Technology, China. He married his wife in 1997 and had children. In 1999, Wang received a PhD in materials science from the Shanghai Institute of Ceramics at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Career. In 1999, Wang was awarded a Japan Science and Technology Agency (STA) fellowship to undertake research at the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology (AIST) in Nagoya, Japan, where he investigated low-dimensional semiconductor nanomaterials. In 2001, he was recruited to the National Institute for Materials Science (NIMS) in Tsukuba, Japan, to undertake a postdoctoral fellowship with Takeyoshi Sasaki, where he conducted innovative research on the synthesis and characterization of layered materials and 2-dimensional semiconductor nanosheets. In 2004, Wang was recruited to the ARC Center of Excellence for Functional Nanomaterials led by Max Liu at the University of Queensland, UQ, in Australia, where, in 2006, he received an Australian Research Council ARC, Queen Elizabeth Roman II Fellowship, and commenced leadership of a multidisciplinary program on self-assembled nanostructures for energy conversion applications. In 2007, he was appointed as a senior lecturer at UQ's School of Chemical Engineering. In 2010, Wang was appointed as an associate professor in the School of Chemical Engineering and full professor in 2012. Also in 2012, he became director of the Nanomaterials Centre, NanoMac, at the University of Queensland, and a senior group leader at the Australian Institute for Bioengineering and Nanotechnology. Wang is a Fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry, as well as a member of the executive committees of the Australian Nanotechnology Network and the National Committee for Materials Science and Engineering of the Australian Academy of Science Oz. He was appointed as a panel member of the ARC College of Experts in 2016 to 2018. In 2022, he was elected a foreign member of the Academia Europaea. Research Wang is recognized internationally for the design and development of semiconductor nanomaterials for use in cleaner and more efficient solar energy conversion and storage systems, including new photocatalysts for solar-driven hydrogen, valuable chemical production, low-cost solar cells, and integrated energy storage systems. He has published over 350 journal papers in nanomaterial and nanotechnology fields. According to Google Scholar, he has an H-index of 71 and over 17,000 citations. In late 2018, Wang's team broke the efficiency world record of quantum dot solar cells, which was recognized in the highly influential Best Research Cell Efficiencies chart. Awards and recognition. Wang has been honored with numerous awards including a Japan Science and Technology Fellowship, Australian Research Council KE Fellowship of 2006, UQ Foundation Research Excellence Award, Scopus Young Researcher Award 2011, Engineering and Technology category, ARC Future Fellowship of 2012, Fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry, Springer's Top Papers Award of 2017 and 2018, UQ Awards for Excellence in Higher Degree by Research Supervision of 2018, and an Australian Laureate Fellowship in 2019. He was elected a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Science in 2024. That is all for tonight. Let the silence settle in. Sleep well.